In this video, let's delve into a tale of what unfolds as the ski season draws to a close. Imagine this. You, well, yes, that's me for this time, suddenly find yourself presented with a golden chance to escape to the mountains for a few days in the spring. Now, when we talk about budget skiing and last-minute plans, the renowned three valleys, and Val Thorens specifically, might not instantly pop into mind. Personally, I've always associated the three valleys with Meribel and Courchevel, but truth be told, skiing doesn't quite take center stage there. I mean, when we think of Courchevel, skiing is more like an afterthought, right? But wait, there's a twist in the tale. Val Thorens and the Belleville Valley have something new to offer. Let's dive right into the adventure. The idea of Val Thorens came about when we started to consider what is left of the Alpine resorts. The peak season has already waved goodbye, and we were left wondering where there was still a sprinkle of snow anywhere. Lo and behold, Val Thorens emerged as one of Europe's highest resorts. Another such spot that rings a bell is Livigno. Remember, I showed it in another video. So, despite the late start, the chances of a splendid skiing experience were still very much on our side. As we drove through the flat expanse of France, basking in the brilliant sunlight, the trees started sprouting their first leaves. Even the vineyards had cast off their winter cloak. Isn't it quite the contrary of what you'd expect when you're all geared up for skiing and snow? As we ascended, the greenery gave way to more wintry surroundings, although the real winter vibes only made a brief appearance. There was only one frosty night when we finally saw a touch of snow near our abode. Now, as usual, we didn't stay in Val Thorens itself. Wise counsel led us to the neighboring Courchevel Valley, a cozy village that served as our base. From there, reaching the Ray ski lift was a breeze, transporting us to the pass and into the heart of the Belleville Valley and Val Thorens ski domain. Hotels? Nah, not our style. These mountain trips are a peek into the locals' way of life for me. Sure, they cater to tourists, but it's an entirely different experience from a hotel, no matter how luxurious it is. Our abode this time was a quaint 200-year-old dwelling. On a previous joint to Sestriere, we even stayed in a 17th century house. And a fun fact is that you can find such gems in this very village as well. This rustic setting has its ups and downs. The perks, aside from that lovely authentic touch I already rambled about, include the cost. Staying in such a house costs a fraction of a hotel's price tag. Granted, they don't offer room service, but if you're not into the mood to cook, local eateries are always an option. The village also exudes tranquility, which might not be everyone's cup of tea, but I like it. But regardless, getting to the chairlift does require some effort. Buses exist, but I doubt they run from our village. Yet some 10 minutes in a comfy car to reach the lift, quite a small price for a taste of Alpine authenticity. These villages often share a common aesthetic. Squat stone houses designed to keep the warmth, narrow lanes, a charming church, and a breathtaking scenery all around. Even the air here feels different, though I must admit no words or cameras can truly capture that essence. There's something that often puzzles me in these mountainside villages. The roads leading to them are full of twisty turns, and as soon as you veer off the main road, which typically winds along the valley floor, the guardrails often vanish. It's not too nerve-wracking in daylight and dry conditions, but it's a different story when you have to navigate these roads at night after snowfall or when it's icy. That's why this time I played the prudent role and carried chains in the trunk, just like a thrifty hamster would. Up on the surrounding mountains, snow has already made an appearance, though the journey to the ski lift still felt like a perfect spring day. The parking lot below basked in warmth, registering a cozy 15 or 17 degrees Celsius. It's a blessing, of course, but not when you find yourself waiting at the lowest station. A jacket is fine, you can always peel it off. However, the pants might feel quite toasty, even with all the ventilation flaps open. Ski passes posed no hassle, thankfully. We didn't invest in a 3-valley pass this time around. First off, we wouldn't have had the chance to conquer all those slopes during our stay. And secondly, the low areas were already thawing out. Meribel and Courchevel had bid adieu to their snowy coats, and even the lower stretches of Val Thorens near Les Meuniers were looking more like water skiing zones. But higher up, even on the sunniest day, in the end of the season, in the upper Belleville Valley, a blanket of white still stretched before us. Val Thorens boasts several glaciers, so while the trees might be scarce, oh fine, there are none at all in fact, Morzine is the go-to for that. There's plenty of snow to keep the skiing spirits high. And you know what? No rocks or pebbles underfoot like the ones you'd find in Bormio. Remember, I've got a whole video dedicated to that place. Day 1 unveiled the sunniest skies. What luck! As I tried to recall which side the poles were meant to be held and how to get into my skis without turning it into a comedy sketch, I managed to ski without breaking a sweat. The slopes were blissfully uncrowded and the terrain showcased its charm. Isn't it a beautiful start of the adventure? With weather so ideal and Pistes impeccably maintained, the lack of throngs is a puzzle. One might assume that the crowds have spread across the famous 600 kilometers of the slopes. But nope, only around 150 kilometers and 68 slopes of the Belleville Valley remained accessible from the 342 pistes that make up the whole 3 valleys. Blame it on the season's end, I suppose. On some runs, I was practically skiing in splendid solitude. The trails on the opposite side of the valley from Val Thorens seemed less congested. People often prefer a straight shot up from the town to the glaciers, hence more folks gather there, rendering the slopes busier. If you are on the hunt for tranquility, direct your gaze towards the Cimet-Caron and Boissemont lifts. No need to descend too far, there's another skiing domain there and your Val Thorens pass might not cover it. Plus it's notably lower, so you could be splashing through puddles instead of carving through snow. At this point, I'm perched on the glacier above town, and the view paints a clear picture of the difference in crowd density on either side of the valley. Oh, and a little nugget for you. The slopes opposite Val Thorens point northeast, hence the best time for a jaunt there is morning. Accompanying diversions abound for those who'd rather not test their ski legs, or those who enjoy exploring less conventional ways of getting themselves into amusing situations. Everyone has their own unique idea of fun, and that's what makes life interesting. Now, let's talk about Val Thorens as a lodging haven. Truth be told, it didn't quite bowl me over. It felt a tad cramped and bustling, with trails that didn't quite hit the sweet spot for thrill. However, the allure of ski-in and ski-out convenience was undeniable. Almost like over years, right? Accessing the slopes above the town requires a brief traverse through Val Thorens, so you can't really avoid it completely. Just a note, the glaciers are still significantly less crowded than the valley below. Day 2 witnessed a weather shift for the worse. A shroud of fog wrapped the base, while up top it escalated into a full-fledged snowfall. We had already gotten into the rhythm of things, so it wasn't much of a bother. Admittedly, skiing in the midst of clouds was a bit soggy and damp, but hey, as they say, it's not about being Siberian tough, it's about dressing smartly. And of course, a cup of mulled wine didn't hurt. Speaking of which, don't forget to ask for vin chaud. That's the French way of saying it. In France, the trail markers come with a twist. They display the name, difficulty level, and there's a number, not indicating the Pistes number, but how many markers remain till the end of the trail. It's rather nifty when it comes to pacing yourself, but it won't help much when you navigate the crossroads. Owing to the weather, only the upper trails felt comfortable. Yet the crowds had vanished. Still, snow is snow, and we reveled in every moment. Some spots proved tricky to read due to the fog, but little did we know what awaited us in a couple of days. Funny how we sometimes complained then. The third day was a blend of the first and the second. No sun, but no snowfall either. Overcast, but clear enough. The crowds were also thinner. Pure beauty. The visuals did not have been top-notch, but the feelings, they were running high as usual. Snow conditions still bordered on ideal. Not slushy, not icy. The main thing was to avoid the lowest sections. They had turned rather damp. Oh, the next day brought a chill. Snow had crept into our living quarters, a sign that it had arrived at the peaks as well. Indeed, the snow beneath the lift materialized much earlier than the day prior. At last, it looked like winter had embraced us. The contours of the slope became a mystery. Navigating was a challenge. We only relied on the poles and sometimes memory to guide us. During our descent and ascent, our tracks were constantly erased by the fresh snowfall. That's why it's just me and the mountains, with the slopes blanketed in fresh snow and not a soul around. Somewhere there is my ski. The second one is, here it is. And we are heading forward over there, to what used to be a boring blue piste. Well, to be fair, the red ones are not any different now. Here is what the fun looks like. That is just for you to understand where we were. Here is a pole, and it is actually a normal full-length one, just like the one I'm showing. Intermittent breaks and the snowfall only heightened the joy. Skiing is even more delightful when the snow isn't dancing above you. Otherwise, you sometimes find yourself knee-deep in the snow, and that's not an exaggeration. What's heartening is that the snow remains light and fluffy, a pleasure to ski on. An absolutely mind-blowing experience. On the last day, the sun finally reclaimed his throne, blessing us with excellent weather. Perhaps Val Thorens wanted to bid us farewell on a bright note, enticing us to return for more. Interestingly, it seemed yesterday's weather had given some folks pause, leaving the slopes pleasantly serene. Of course, this didn't deter the Telemark enthusiasts, and I can emphasize, the views from up here are truly breathtaking. The Pistes had been meticulously groomed overnight, and there was no trace of water. What more could you ask for at the moment? These are those very slopes opposite Val Thorens. Take a peek at the loneliness. Interestingly, the slopes above the city aren't swarming either. Kudos to the French for keeping the slopes well prepared, even for the handful of daredevils who braved the Pistes. And guess what? After yesterday's escapades, it's finally possible to weave between the official tracks. Pockets of fluffy snow from the previous day still linger. As the day progressed, snow began to fall again. Filming became tricky, but skiing was an adventure and fun. The pistes turned a tad softer, but not enough to hinder our momentum. No need to save energy for tomorrow, it's the final day after all. So we skied to our heart's content, pushing the limits, which we enjoyed thoroughly. Time slipped through our fingers. It was time to bid adieu, but even during these few days, Val Thorens showcased its myriad facets. Bright and overcast, shrouded in fog and wrapped in snow, it never failed to captivate. As for a return, that's up to you, but one thing is for sure. Experiencing Val Thorens is a must, at least once in a lifetime. The rest, well, it's your call. For us now, it's time to head back. See you in the next video.